Welcome home. This is Audio EXP for the April the 19th, and the episode title is Tariffs, Lovecraft, and Other Demons. Keith de Edinburgh won the RPG Publisher Spotlight this month. The interview is up, and we talk briefly about tips for publishers who want to get involved with Chaosium's community content program, the Miskatonic Repository. Keith told me there are ambassadors in the organisation who can help with essential questions. For example, not every unspeakable horror in the mythos was created by Lovecraft, and so some are protected by copyright. The ambassadors can help you steer safely through those dangerous legal waters. And well done, you noticed there wasn't a podcast last week. I was at Scotland's oldest tabletop gaming convention. That's Edinburgh University's Compulsion, although the connection to Edinburgh Uni is pretty slender these days. I played a game of Call of Cthulhu and got eaten by a god. I played a game of Wraithlands, which manages to be both a dark Celtic folk story and a slightly surreal world at the same time. I played D&D, and I played a game of Ben Newborn's Cytopia, GM'd by Ben himself. I rather like the system, especially the bit where a good dice roll can turn a thing your character had been struggling with, essentially a persistent disadvantage, around and become a strength. Now, apologies for not reminding listeners in advance that we would be skipping a week. The truth is, up until the last minute, there was a chance you'd get an upgrade with a guest host. Sadly, that fell through. So let's check out the big news since we spoke last, and there's been plenty. It's bad news for many though. Darryl Lauder, a creative director at Greater Than Games, broke the news that the whole company had closed. His entire team, have lost their jobs. Flat River Games, who had bought Greater Than a few years back, later updated their website to say that Greater Than Games would still sell games, but had downsized staff or some other than less than empathetic wording for letting people go. What was the problem? It's tariffs. Tariffs are forcing people in the United States to pay twice as much as they used to for many imports from China. And sadly, it looks like this will be the first of a few. Cephalophore Games, who make Gloomhaven, have over $1.2 million worth of games stuck in China. Japanime Games and Arcane Wonders are both on record with similar problems. And it's not just that the USA does not yet have factories to make these games, but these are current games that were made in China this year and are simply on the wrong side of the tariff line at the wrong time. You know, Apple airlifted 600 tons of iPhones to India with the Indian government's help to beat these tariffs, but games companies could not. As it happens, I do know of European logistic companies who are now looking to import from China to Europe and then from Europe to America. I want to get permission that they are being public with this before I name them, though. Americans now have to pay an extra 100% on imports from China, but only say 10% extra on imports from the United Kingdom. So you can see how this logistics shuffle could work. Buckle up, here comes a fight. A while back we reported that the big American logistics company in the gaming world, Diamond Comics Distributors, had filed for bankruptcy protection, but they did have a stalking horse bid already, and they were looking for buyers. And it looked like good news, as Alliance Entertainment seemed to win the auction. However, Diamond filed paperwork to sell itself to Universal Distribution, which I think was the original stalking horse. And now accountants and lawyers are debating over who really put the best bid in, and it's gone legal. But isn't it odd that a company that seemed to have such financial challenges is now being fought over? Sometimes I guess news comes in the form of trends through companies and people getting the same idea at the same time. Speaking of which, Following the news that Chris Perkins would leave Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons & Dragons, we have the news that game director Jeremy Crawford is leaving too. It's on his terms. Wizards say that their roadmap for D&D is intact, but surely this represents a changing of the guard. Okay, good news. Atlas Games has been granted $100,000, and it's for their Replay Workshop, a company that recycles waste plastic like gaming sprues into new gaming material. The money has even come from the local US government, and a chunk of it has gone onto a machine that eats waste plastic, melts it down, and turns it back into plastic ready to make it into something else. Congratulations to John and Michelle, nephew. Mongoose Publishing has had an interesting few weeks, but the good news is they have secured the rights to Dark Conspiracy. Would you believe it? In this role-playing game of the near cyberpunk feature, but governments are up to no good. And I think this is good news, unless you're one of the unlucky would-be attendees, but London's Dragon Meet has created a free-to-attend event called Call to Adventure. It was all about getting people into tabletop gaming, especially kids. However, it sold all the tickets it's allowed to, and the organisers have been asking outlets like Geek Native to get the word out. So there you have it, Londoners. If you had planned to rock up to Kensington Town Hall next week and see if you can get in, please don't. Check the website first. It's certainly good news that this handful band of brave volunteers have been so successful and that there's interest in the hobby still. There are some freebies to mention this week as well. Firstly, there's Two Little Mice who are growing their cinematic fun of Outgunned into the superhero genre, and the Outgunned superhero quick start is out. And there are 2 high-profile freebies from Modiphius. Firstly, there's the quick start for Space 1999. That's a UK classic sci-fi in which a team is blasted off into space, and it's way more adult than it is camp. And the second is a quick start for Heroes of Might and Magic, which is another old name back again. Lastly, in bundles, there's one from Green Odin's Third Era on the Bundle of Holding, and another from the Games Machinery for the somewhat adult Defiant. In Defiant, you are a powerful supernatural creature, and you are from the very start of the game. And rather than taking part in the apocalypse, you saved your corner of the world, and now you find yourself in a game of courtly and high-stakes romance, politics and brinkmanship with the other supernatural creatures who made the same call as you. On that note, keep safe, do as the demon says, and see you next week.